Have you ever done literally everything right? You've shown up, you've put in the work, checked all the boxes, and yet you still feel this undeniable ache underneath the whole shebang. Like something is just missing, but you can't even put your finger on what it is. Well, the source material we're looking at today calls that feeling lack. And in this explainer, we're diving into a really profound exploration of human emptiness. We're going to look at a woman from an ancient narrative who knew that exact, exhausting ache better than almost anyone. We'll be pulling from John chapter 4 and Psalm 23 to understand why you might still feel empty, and more importantly, what it actually means. So let's just get right into it.
So, what if the emptiness you keep feeling isn't a sign that God is far away, but actually a signal to recognize what's already right there in front of you? Think about it. We usually assume an ache, that feeling of missing something, is a sign of distance, right? We feel empty, so we automatically assume the fix is miles away, leaving us totally isolated. But the text we're breaking down today completely flips that idea on its head. It suggests that this deep, persistent thirst isn't an absence at all. It's actually an invitation.
To really get this, we have to paint the picture of the setting. Imagine a blazing midday sun right overhead. Golden sand, stone, and this hazy heat shimmering right off a dusty ancient road. And there, sitting entirely alone, is a stone well, just outside the town of Sychar and Samaria. This environment is harsh. It is sweltering, and it's deeply isolating. Historically, Jews and Samaritans had centuries of massive tension and mutual contempt. Travelers would literally walk miles out of their way just to avoid crossing into Samaria. So when the text points out that Jesus had to pass through Samaria, it wasn't about the map. It was about a purpose. And waiting for him at this isolated well in the dead heat of the day is a solitary woman.
Now, to understand her, you have to realize how totally backward her routine is. Normally, drawing water at the well was the morning gathering. Women in that region came out early when the air was cool and the morning mist was just fading. They walked together. It was literally the center of community life, full of catching up, connection, the whole thing. But this woman's routine? Entirely different. She comes out at midday, under a blazing hot sun, walking down that dusty road completely alone. She's doing this deliberately, you see, to dodge the whispers, the stares, and the heavy shame of her community. She goes at the one specific hour she knows nobody else will be around.
And the reason she's avoiding everyone? It really comes down to one single number: 5. By the time she gets to this ancient stone well, she has had 5 husbands. And the man she's living with right now, not one of them. In her culture, a reputation like that doesn't just stay quiet behind closed doors. It follows you. It dictates how people look at you in the marketplace, whether you're welcomed or totally shunned. Her cultural baggage is so heavy that she is literally forced to make this hot, lonely, exhausting trek out into the desert every single day, just so she can get some water in peace.
And this brings us to a massive, universal human pattern that the source text highlights. It's this relentless, exhausting loop. Step 1, you feel the thirst. Step 2, you lower that heavy clay jar and draw from the well. Step 3, you thirst again. She's going back to a well, a place that has literally never, not once, kept her full. You pull from it, you feel okay for a fleeting second, and then the thirst is right back. It's a brilliant metaphor for how we operate. Those 5 husbands, that's 5 attempts to fill a void that none of them could possibly fill. And for us today, maybe it's not relationships. Maybe we keep going back to the well of our careers, or chasing achievements, or desperate approval. We just loop through these steps, crossing our fingers that this time it'll finally stick. But the well never actually fixes the thirst, does it? It just delays it.
Here is absolutely the most crucial takeaway. Spiritual lack doesn't always look like emptiness. Honestly, sometimes it looks like being very, very busy. We tend to think of lack as sitting alone in a quiet room feeling sad. But in reality, going back to that well over and over, filling the jar frantically, running through that loop on repeat, that is what lack looks like in action. Constantly drawing from a physical well is a surprisingly effective way to avoid sitting with the really uncomfortable reality of how incredibly thirsty we actually are. Because hey, if you keep moving, you don't have to face the quiet.
Right in the middle of this exhausting cycle of avoidance, something totally unexpected happens. Jesus, who is just sitting there at this well, looks at her and asks for a drink. You have to understand, this completely shatters the cultural boundaries of the ancient world. A Jewish rabbi speaking to a Samaritan woman, alone, in public? No way. She is stunned. She basically asks him outright, "Why are you talking to me?" But instead of giving a surface-level answer about cultural rules, Jesus steps entirely underneath her question. He tells her, look, if you knew who was actually asking you for water, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. He totally ignores the surface stuff and zeroes right in on the deep, unspoken ache beneath all those failed wells. Let's just break down the profound shift happening right here. On one side, we've got the physical stone well she's been chained to. It requires constant, draining work, it only gives a temporary fix, and it's a totally external source. It's basically a Band-Aid. But then look at what's being offered instead. Living water. He says whoever drinks this will never thirst again. It becomes this internal source springing right up into eternal life. And notice this. He doesn't say she'll never literally need to drink water again. He's saying the ache itself, that spiritual deficiency, gets resolved. The physical well isn't necessary for her soul anymore because the source of satisfaction is now inside. He's going after the root, not just treating the symptom.
And then, wow, we hit the most pivotal interaction in the entire narrative. Jesus tells her, "Go call your husband." When she admits she doesn't have one, he gently replies that she's absolutely right. She's had 5, and the guy she's with now isn't her husband. He literally names the exact thing she has been hiding, right there in plain daylight. He names the whole reason she's making that awful hot walk alone. But here is the kicker. He doesn't condemn her for it. He doesn't lecture her. He doesn't demand she clean up her act before he hands over the water. He just completely sees her full pattern, names it out loud, and keeps right on offering her grace.
This illustrates such a profound application for anyone listening right now. God can name your lack without shaming you for it. Acknowledging our broken patterns, our messy loops of going back to dry, empty wells, it isn't about being exposed or humiliated. It's about finally being filled. The text makes it so clear. God is not meeting you at the well to expose you. He's there to fill you. When he sees every single well you've desperately tried that couldn't hold water, the response isn't an accusation. It's just a wide open offer of grace.
To really anchor this thought, let's geek out on the textual scholarship for a second. The ancient Hebrew word for lack is chazer. It's the exact same word used in the incredibly famous Psalm 23, where David writes, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," or "I shall not lack." Now, David isn't saying he suddenly has $1 million and every material resource he ever wanted. He's saying that because of who is standing right next to him, lack itself just has no hold on him anymore. True fulfillment is entirely about a recognized presence, not new provisions. When you recognize the shepherd is present, the experience of lack vanishes, even if your external circumstances haven't changed one bit.
So, back at the well, in the blazing heat, the woman starts deflecting, talking theology. She says, I know the Messiah is coming and he'll explain everything to us. And Jesus simply replies, I who speak to you am he. Guys, this is the massive turning point of the text. It is a moment of pure, mind-blowing recognition. She suddenly realizes exactly who has been sitting beside that dark, still water with her the entire time. She didn't need a new religious ritual. She certainly didn't need a sixth husband. She just needed to recognize the presence of the one standing right in front of her.
There's an ancient early church text called the Gospel of Truth, and it describes this exact phenomenon so beautifully. It says, "The fog of lack dissolves not because something was added, but because something was remembered." Think about that. It portrays lack as this dense fog of forgetting. When you're trapped inside that fog, the emptiness feels so incredibly real and heavy. But the very second you wake up to the truth, the moment you remember and recognize who is right there with you, the lack instantly loses all its substance. Her lack wasn't a resource problem, it was a knowing problem. And the second she recognized him, the fog just evaporated. So, boiling down the core theses of this whole explainer, it comes down to these big takeaways. First, spiritual lack is absolutely not a resource problem. You do not need more external stuff to fix the ache. Second, it is a recognition problem. It's about opening your eyes to who is already there. And finally, the circumstances that are leaving you feeling so incredibly thirsty, they're actually invitations. Those frustrating, repetitive, unfulfilling loops you keep running through are not accidents. They are cues. They're invitations to stop drawing from a dry well and finally look at who's been sitting beside it with you the whole time.
And I absolutely love how this source text wraps up. It ends with this incredibly powerful visual metaphor. The text makes a point to explicitly tell us this detail. She left her heavy clay jar behind. She just set it down in the dust by the well, turned around, and ran back into the city to tell everyone what she'd found. Think about what that jar actually represented. It was her heavy burden, her daily exhausting loop, her go-to tool for treating the symptom of her thirst. Leaving it behind visually signals that she was done. She no longer needed to draw from the old well. She had finally tapped into the internal source, the living water.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really provocative question to think about. What are you actually thirsty for? Seriously, if you've been running back to the same distractions, the same endless coping mechanisms, and they just keep leaving you feeling empty, maybe it's time to take a hard look at those reoccurring patterns. What if the thirst you are feeling right now is actually an invitation to drop your heavy jar? Take a minute today to really think about the wells you keep visiting. I hope this deep dive into the source material encourages you to explore it further, and maybe, just maybe, finally recognize what or who is waiting to fill that lock.